Hello and welcome to today's Global Leadership Forecast webcast. We are in our fourth installation of this webcast series, and we're excited today to be talking about digital era leadership. I'm your host, Amanda Popila, and I'm a researcher in human capital at the Conference Board. Today we're going to cover a few areas on digital era leadership. We're going to talk about the skills needed, the leadership capabilities, and how to assess readiness of your talent. And then we're going to focus on how to develop digital accelerator leadership immersion programs. Before we get into all of this, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items. You can see how to earn HRCI, SHRM, or CPE certification credits. That information is on your screen, so please follow the instructions if you need those credits. If you would like to download today's presentation deck, that pod is the middle pod at the bottom of your screen. And we want to make this as interactive as possible today. I know there are a lot of you on the line today. So please type your questions into the chat pod, and we will go through questions as we receive them. I'm excited to be joined today by two colleagues and also co-authors of the Global Leadership Forecast 2018 report. We have Joe Detman, who's the partner and principal of People Advisory Services at EY, and Molly Andres, who is the manager of People Advisory Services at EY. So I'm going to hand it over to Molly in just a minute, but if you're not familiar with the Global Leadership Forecast, this is a very large leadership development study. We had over 2,500 HR professionals respond, 25,000 leaders globally respond to this survey. In 50 countries, 26 industries, so it's a really large, diverse sample that participated in the study this past year. And some of the demographics here, you can see we have a good sample of generations, leadership levels, industries, countries, and regions. There's slightly more males and females participated in the study. In an upcoming webcast, we'll talk about some of the gender differences, but really a diverse sample. And because we had so many responses and we're able to split this data into many different ways, we have a lot of rich data to cover. So this series, it spans a full year. We have 12 webcasts that are going to focus on a different theme each time. So today we're in that second pod, the digital and data. But we've talked about leaders at the core. We had a webcast on strategy that's available on demand. We will talk about growth and potential, some of the leadership diversity. I talked about the gender differences. We also have a webcast on generational differences coming up later this year. We have one on cultural drivers and what some of those drivers are. And then finally, the HR opportunity and HR's role in all of this transformation. So with that, I will hand it over to Molly to get us started and talk about what we're going to be focused on today in the digital and data aspects.
Great, thanks Amanda, and I am happy to be here. So excited that I see so many folks on the line today, so thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. We hope to make this, as Amanda said, as interactive as possible by sharing your thoughts and questions with us, and we're just going to take some time today. This is, like Amanda said, the fourth in a series where we are talking about leadership and sharing best practices, case study, and the impact that leaders are having today, and how we can propel leadership readiness to excel organizations forward. So we are sharing and doing a deep dive into the chapter of digital era leadership and looking at some of that research. Before we go too much further, though, I think it's important that we pause and operationalize and define what we mean when we say digital era leadership. Now, we have reached a new paradigm in leadership, and it has given us the opportunity, and I'd go so far as to even say the necessity, to rethink our leadership models and focus on that collaboration and the blend of digital and human, and focus on innovation, growth, and inclusion. So with that kind of as the backdrop, Joe, I'd ask you to kind of speak about what we mean and how we define digital era leader.
Great, thanks, Molly. And I want to also just express my gratitude for those of you who joined. We know how busy everyone is. We study it, we see it every day. And for you to take an hour out of your day to allow us to share some wisdom is a big deal. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So to set the stage, what do we mean by digital era leaders? I think what the global leadership forecast has done it's allowed us to pretty clearly define today, not yesterday, but today, what separates great leaders from good leaders. So what is that sort of differentiated mindset and skill set that is separating the great leaders from the good leaders today? So digital era leaders, it's really a label for those who are very effective in this transformative time. They have a modern mindset and skill set. They're able to balance a lot of different capabilities very effectively in this transformative era. So that's very broadly what we mean. Effective leaders today in this not industrial but digital era. And there are a few markers that really define that if you get a layer deeper on it. We're going to go into those in greater depth, but just to kind of set it at a high level, they are technically strong. No matter what they do, be it finance or IT or strategy, no matter what level they are, they have technical expertise. So it sort of starts with a base of some technical expertise. They're adaptive. They're curious. One of my clients called them insatiably curious, always learning, always wanting to understand the next thing. They're not just into diversity numbers, they're seriously inclusive. So they proactively recognize inclusive behaviors. They proactively build inclusive teams. They are integrators of people and ideas. They're empathetic, very human. They operate on a very human level. They're clear-minded. They're resilient, which has emerged once again as a critical leadership capability in this very transformative, disrupted time. They're into tech and into people, not one or the other, and they're unafraid. They're unafraid, and they're willing to pioneer when they need to pioneer. So those are a lot of things, and not everybody has to be expert at all of those, but that sort of colloquially defines what we're talking about when we look at leadership greatness today, or what we're calling digital era leaders.
Joe, and if I would add as well too, I think it's worth noting the concept that the challenge for these leaders is twofold, right? So we have to preserve their authenticity. They have to be in tune with their true self. At the same time, recognizing that they need to evolve and stay in tune with their true self with this emergence of digital technology and change. So thank you for operationalizing that for us. I think it just puts into better context, where we're heading today and what we're going to be talking about and the capabilities we're going to be discussing. But why now, and kind of why the burning platform? And I think if you open up any of your favorite news headlines, you are going to see things that are highlighting ethical and compliance breaches, behavioral risk, and boards are really paying attention to this. Not to mention the war for talent and the imperative that we get our succession planning right, because the cost for hiring and the cost for developing talent in these roles is just really staggering. Organizations are finding it a necessity to be nimble as disruptors are entering the market. And not to mention the inclusiveness imperative. It is critical that we are achieving better business results and competing for talent, and inclusiveness brings everybody's voice and perspective to the table, and organizations are coming to realize more and more that they need to have an inclusive and representative team in order to compete and stay ahead. And now we have tools and technology to enable these processes. So it's really time that we embrace this opportunity, and it's time that we connect humans and technology. Joe, I'm going to turn it back to you. Are we ready to lead? I think you have some really interesting statistics here that came out of the global leadership forecast, as well as other research of, what organizations and what leaders are saying in terms of their readiness to move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. So businesses are transforming. We always have been, we always will be. But it feels like with technology advancements, the pace is a lot faster today. Every form of transformation is happening all the time, from cost reduction to functional transformation to digital transformation. So the pace has increased, and everybody's trying to bake innovation into the core of what they do. It doesn't matter if you're a retailer, a healthcare organization, a diversified industrial products company. Everybody is trying to fold innovation into their core DNA, which takes technology and digital transformation. It takes transforming your business to be much more technology savvy. And so we're all trying to keep up with our global ecosystem and the macroeconomy and the influence of technology companies. And so, a lot of these trends that Molly has just taken us through put leaders into positions to answer existential questions about their businesses and truly transform. And a recent study by CEB Gartner illustrated that 80% of CEOs are focused right now on driving digital transformation for their business. It's a top priority. 4 to 5 CEOs say our business is driving digital or technology, scaled technology transformation for our business. In the Global Leadership Forecast, what we learned is that only 22% of us feel ready to operate within that kind of environment in a highly complex, rapid pace, more digital work environment. Fewer than 1 in 4 of us feel prepared to operate in that kind of environment. And we also learned that only 14% of us feel like we've got a healthy pipeline of leaders around us ready to drive the future of our business. So I would sum it up as follows. Everybody's doing it. Most of us feel underprepared, and few of us feel like we have the leaders or talent around us to really help us drive the future. That is a burning platform for us needing to think differently about what we're doing with leadership and how we're preparing our leaders to lead today. That is a bit of setting the stage. Now, whether you're a leader listening in or responsible for leadership learning and or people programs, there are so many different things that we could do to learn and to develop ourselves and our leaders. My guess is that many of you have in recent years been looking at your leadership framework and said, we've got to think about what capabilities our leaders really need to have today to drive our business today and tomorrow. If you haven't, now's the time. At EY, we're doing this ourselves right now. We're constantly revisiting what it means to be a great leader and to be a digital era leader, a transformative leader, if you will. So we'd like to take you through a little bit of the evolution of what we're seeing emerge from the Global Leadership Forecast. And I will animate this as we go through this. Let us be the first to say, we're not here with a message of throw the baby out with the bathwater and, carte blanche on leadership. We have 50 plus years of tremendous research and practice on developing leaders. And a lot of it is good and some of it is great. But we think the working world has changed enough where it's time for us to rethink some of the leadership capability fundamentals, what we drive leader learning around, and what we choose to learn as leaders. The basics of leadership capability, things like business acumen, authenticity, customer focus, results orientation, those still matter. We would argue those are 1.0. They will get you to good leadership. And we have a lot of good leaders out there. But they will not likely get you to great. And that's really what we're searching for in the Global Leadership Forecast. To get to great, what we found is 2 things. One, some of the leadership fundamentals, the principles that we've all been selected on and developed against and driving learning around, have to evolve because our working world has changed again. So here are a few of the most important. We go from simply building one-to-one relationships to acting agilely across a network. We are less hierarchical. We work in fewer dyads, one-to-one working relationships. We are typically working in interdisciplinary teams much more quickly across a network of people inside and outside our companies. So you've got to go from just one-to-one relationship building, which still matters, to really moving agilely across the network. Good leaders 1.0 communicate. Great leaders communicate with purpose. And that is a different thing. So typically people will tell you what, sometimes how. They don't often take the time to tell you why. And that's what great leaders do. They're very clear on their personal purpose and the purpose of the team, the business unit, the function, the organization, and they can connect individual purpose to collective purpose. And when they communicate, they connect back to why. Why does this matter for us? It's easier said than done. It takes time to discover and appreciate purpose. It takes thoughtfulness. And today, when we're so distracted and busy, we have less time to think and do that. And it takes time then to communicate that purpose and connect people to it. But great leaders are doing that, finding a way to do that. We go from simply teaming with people to collaborating virtually. Most of us are working in geographically dispersed virtual teams. There is a real skill to leading effectively when mediated by technology. Most of us are seeing all the ills that social media mediation is creating for our society. There's a lot of good too, but there's some bad things that are happening. And technology mediation at work can cause the same barriers and issues. And great leaders are finding a way to engage people even through technology, engage a team even when virtual, remote, geographically dispersed. We go from learning to being constantly curious and ideating, experimenting, trying, learning, failing fast, all these things that are associated with agile mindset. That's what modern learning is really about. And then we go from simply managing change to navigating and pioneering disruption. Not a reactionary, just manage it, but a proactive, navigate for the team and really pioneer that disruption when needed. That's where the unafraid comes in. So that is an evolution of some of the kind of core principles we've grown up on. Now, we're here to say we've got to emphasize some newer behaviors too. Not all of these are brand new, but for the first time for many organizations, they're making their way into leadership frameworks, and we're very intentionally, seriously driving leadership learning around some of these. So mind clarity, having a clear mind, being able to pull the signal through the noise for yourself and for your team is really important. And there's a lot of modern practice, not just meditation. There's a lot of modern practice we can weave into our days to be clear in mind. Great leaders are not bogged down by all of the noise, but find a way to pull those signals through. Great leaders today are also actively, consciously balancing the rise of technology with the needs of people, right? It's balancing human and tech very, very intentionally. They are truly empathetic. Empathy has emerged as a critical differentiator. Not a new thing, but as we automate and we interface with each other through technology and we interact with technology directly, we've got to be truly empathetic humans to be good people leaders. They are resilient, so resilience has emerged again as really critical. They are technology fluent, and this is the one where we are doing most of our work with our clients to catch leaders up. Being digital and or technology fluent. These aren't necessarily hard skills. We're not trying to turn leaders into analysts or coders, although some can be and are and choose to be, but it's having a foundational technology and digital acumen. It's being ready to support digital transformation, and it's being ready to drive technology and digital commercialization for the business, taking your products, your service, and building automated technology first, mobile first platforms and tools to really change the business, increase margin, increase customer satisfaction. It's really being technology fluent and doing all of that. And then finally, Molly mentioned inclusion, and I prompted it early too. It's really about being a truly inclusive leader as we work in more dynamic, diverse teams than ever before. So again, some of those constructs are not necessarily new, but they are emerging as critical in differentiating leaders for the first time in this study. So let me put all of this together. I know that was sort of a lot. Let me put all this together for you in a single frame. Now we consultants love our wheels, so we hope you'll forgive us for that. But we developed this in partnership with Insights, and so it's got a personality underpinning to it, although it is a behavioral framework. This frame does three things for us. It really balances these capabilities equally. So to be fit to serve our families, our friends, our communities, our companies, we've got to be balanced, integrated leaders, in control of our leadership style and capability, and able to dial up one thing in one situation and another thing in another situation. Leadership, of course, is still very situational. So the great leaders are integrated in that they don't necessarily do all of these things very, very well all of the time, but they're able to kind of move around the board and emphasize the kind of leadership capability they need given what the situation is called for. So this framework sort of balances the leadership capabilities and allows you to pivot to one place or another depending on what you need. It also organizes these emerging leadership capabilities in a very meaningful way. Some of them we found in the study are very correlated with one another, and so we grouped them into these four kind of macro constructs, or what we're calling leadership archetypes: the navigator, the connector, the relator, and the thinker. So the navigator, some of us are predisposed more naturally to be navigators. We, by nature, embrace the disruption. We are resilient. We lead with purpose. We naturally do some of those things. Some of us are predisposed to be connectors, connecting people to an inspired cause, connecting people and possibilities and ideas, connecting people even through technology with virtual leadership. Some of us are relators. We're by nature very empathetic. We're inclusive, what we call culturally connected. We balance people needs with the rise of technology. And some of us are more naturally thinkers. So we have clear minds, or we work at having clear minds. We're analytical. We're intellectually innovating all the time. We integrate. We think holistically for our businesses. We call that 360-degree thinking. So in a way, we've given some of these emerging capabilities, fancy labels, but we've organized them meaningfully and created these leadership archetypes, which again allow for some balance, allow us to understand our personal styles and to pivot and develop new capabilities as we need to. The third thing this framework does for us is it really just serves as a challenge for existing leadership frameworks. It pulls us forward to think differently about what greatness looks like today out of leaders. So we haven't had many clients yet that have just taken it off the shelf and inserted and said, this is our new leadership framework. But we have had many, many, many use it as the challenge point in the development of something that was really custom to the needs of their business, their culture, their strategy, and their leadership capabilities. So we hope it sort of deepens our understanding of what is emerging as important and pulls us forward to what's next.
Thanks, Joe. So this framework, it very clearly shows it's not just the digital skills that are important for the digital era. And I think that's an important point to make because there's so much out there that's saying, we're driving digital, the importance of the digital skills. So I like that it includes all of those other aspects as well. But we have a question that asks, why is the evolution that you described driven by the digital era? So is it because of the internet, social media, why, with all of these other skills that aren't all digitally related, why is it driven by the digital era?
I think I understand that. I'll try to answer it. And Molly, of course, if you have any views, chime in. But we are going through a fourth industrial revolution. Most of the research and popular press points of view will allude to that, where we are, no longer just an industrial. We have moved to a much more technology-centric digital era or working world. And so, in part, we use that label to reflect the time we're in and where we're going. And so, we will be in this period for some time. Hard to say, but we have to. This is about balancing technology and human at its core. There is a technology or digital centricity, the leadership now that maybe we haven't had as much before. It could have been mechanical or commercial, emphasized much more in the past. Today, it is much more technology and digital centric in our view. So great leaders today don't over-rotate on that. It's not becoming a technologist or a coder or overextending that. It's appreciating that, using some of those skills, building some of that acumen, and then balancing the human needs. The human element of work is more important than ever as we are impacted by technology and we transform our businesses, our societies, our economies at a faster pace than ever before. So it really does hinge on that intersection of technology / digital and human at work.
Yeah, thank you. We had a few questions come in. So the next is, are these capabilities valid for all leaders, or are these digital capabilities that are supplementing other competencies that leaders need?
Yeah, I'm so glad that question came up. Thank you for the person that submitted that. So we see this as an augmentation. There are a lot of leadership fundamentals that are not in this frame. Again, business acumen, authenticity, all those things still matter. If you're focused on the fundamentals, that's great. We should incorporate those. If you're focused on what's moving leaders beyond the fundamentals, this is the augmentation that we're seeing emerge. So it is, in our view, an augmentation framework. So a complete leadership framework might have some of the fundamentals and might have some of these. Now, that said, we are seeing this framework apply across leadership levels very well. We're doing executive leadership development around it at the C-suite and L2 and L3 in several clients. We're doing it at frontline manager and emerging leader programs as well, and everything in between. So it's got a resonance across levels. You have to get underneath each of these and define them behaviorally for your business, and levels of proficiency in each one of these, targeted to role, of course, to really make it real, make it sing, and make it apply meaningfully to each of those levels and each of those roles. That's the work. But the frame as a challenge and a broad point of view on leadership is a good starting point, in our view, for any level of leader. You may need to supplement it, or it may supplement some of the foundational leadership capabilities that you need as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Joe, and I would just add on as well some of the opportunities that we're hearing, and what organizations are saying is our current leaders, or those that we have identified to be our future leaders, already have some of those business fundamentals, but in order to accelerate the organization, in order to propel and move an organization forward, what are some of those additional capabilities that we really need to emphasize and place some imperative on to move our people and move our teams forward? And that's where this framework kind of comes into play, is to build on what existing leaders are already coming into the fold with, and to be able to focus on upping their leadership game in order to propel an organization. So I would just add that as another kind of idea of how we're using this model, and how organizations are taking this model and using it as a differentiator with their leaders.
Thank you. And we'll take one more question and then we can move on. I think we're going to answer some of these questions as we go through. But one last on this model is, are any of them more important than others? Or do you see that leaders need to be stronger in some as they move up the ladder, especially into executive roles?
No, I love that question. And I'll give you the consulting answer everybody hates, but it depends. So a lot of our work is dialing this to the leadership team that it's for, and or the organization. So which of these is most important depends on your strategy and your culture and your transformation imperative. So you really have to kind of do the work to get in there with a leadership team and prioritize what's important and connect them to what needs to be delivered in the business. That said, we've been delivering leadership transformation against this framework for some time now, and a few of these consistently emerge across companies and teams and individual leaders as critically important today. One is embracing disruption. We have to move. We have to be more adaptive. We have to move beyond taking change as it comes. We need to expect our leaders to proactively navigate and pioneer the change we need for our company. So embracing disruption is all about that. Resilience has emerged also as really critical, probably not surprising with all of the noise and disruption we face. Resiliency is more important than ever. Being a super connector and connect is a third that is often chosen. We're finding we are still very siloed as businesses, as departments, as functions, as teams. We're breaking that down by changing our operating models, moving to team-based arrangements, but we have to do it culturally too. We have to do it through leadership mindset and behaviors. It's super connectors how we do that. They are the ones who break the silos and reach across the aisle and operate sort of agilely across the organization, very fluid and connected across the company. So that one is a tough one to get right, but really important. In relate empathy, what's interesting about that one, and we could have a long discussion on empathy, that one's pretty charged. Everybody's got a view on empathy and whether it's nature or nurture and how much you can actually develop it and how tied to performance it is. But just a quick anecdote, we were at a Fortune 50 energy company with their executive team with this framework, going through the exercise of prioritizing what is most important for them. And they landed on empathy as number one for an engineering-driven Fortune 50 energy company. And one leader stood up and said, empathy, we have to drive the performance of this business. We can't be touchy-feely about it. And another leader stood up and defended empathy and said, empathy is not on the opposite end of performance. In fact, you get performance through empathy by truly understanding your customers and your colleagues and your teams. That's how you lead, that's how you perform. And so there was a big debate about it, and they landed on keeping it as number one. So empathy has emerged. And then in Think, to give you one there, intellectual innovation, which is just, driving modern learning, agile mindset, experimentation, right? Failing fast, really driving learning and applied learning for innovation. So those are some of the ones that regularly emerge as really important to our clients.
Joe. And thanks to everyone for these questions. Keep them coming. We'll keep answering the questions as they come through. But we are going to move on. So we have a polling question coming up next. So if we could put that question up. So please respond. Yep.
So Amanda, while folks poll, maybe should we take one more just to give them a chance to poll?
Sure. You answered a lot of these. Let's see. Have you worked with organizations where they have mapped these types and used the methods to identify gaps and reflect those in the leadership pipeline?
Yes, that is the work. We hope that is the purpose of a frame like this, not just to inspire different thinking about leadership or drive individuals to develop their own personal leadership differently, but to really help in aggregate teams, departments, functions, business units, enterprises understand the leadership capabilities that they really need to drive the future of their business, assess what they've got, and the gaps to close, and then to go close those gaps by going and getting some more of those leaders or developing leaders against that. We're going to close with a message on that, but that is the work. That is what we hope this leads to is, do we have gaps relative to the kind of leadership we need to see today, and how do we close those gaps through development or acquiring leaders, and or in some cases radically thinking, flipping the pyramid and fast tracking younger generation leaders who come by some of these capabilities very naturally. Certainly some of the more technical digital capabilities. So a lot of that quote unquote reverse mentoring or digital mentoring happening too to fast track some leaders. But in short, yes, that is the work that we hope this leads
Great,
to.
thank you. And I think we just closed the poll. It's interesting. About a quarter of respondents are saying that they did update their core leadership capabilities within the last year. So about a quarter are saying 3 to 5 years. So it looks like, fairly recently, a lot of your companies are doing this or looking to do it now.
That's good. And Amanda, I would just a quick comment on that. 3 to 5 years ago is a long time ago in the life of leadership capabilities, only because, not in the life of leadership academic research and practice, but in the life of leadership practice and leadership learning, our technology development has outpaced our learning. So many of us, if not most of us, are playing catch up in a lot of these capabilities. And the working world is only accelerating. And so 3 to 5 years may not sound like a long time on the surface, but it actually is. And so for those of you who are 3 to 5 years plus out, which is a good proportion of the folks on the call, I would encourage you to think about your frame and whether or not it needs a challenge and a refresh at some point in the near future.
Joe, and I would emphasize and just kind of piggyback off of that as well, is that underneath all of these capabilities is really identifying the behaviors that are associated and that make the difference for these leaders. 3 to 5 years ago, we were very much still focused on this concept of building a strong network and having people around you who were in your sphere of individuals that you could call upon. And now we're looking at a capability that takes that connectivity to the nth level. And we call it being a super connector. It's knowing how to leverage your network, getting the right people in the right place at the right time, leveraging their strengths, developing their opportunities, making sure that you have a team at hand instead of taking the first person that's available, but bringing all the strength and the strong thought leaders to the table in order to empower your team and making a difference. So to your point, 3 to 5 years ago, there has been such an evolution in the tools, the technology, some of the processes that we are seeing into place, not to mention all the disruptors that are coming into the market, that organizations who are embracing the opportunity to relook at these behaviors, to relook at capabilities, may find that they need a shift in order to keep up with some of the disruptors that are coming in and creating a bit of competition where perhaps 3 to 5 years ago that didn't exist.
Yeah. And to this point, we have another question. How do you ensure that your model is nimble enough to update the capabilities as needed?
Wow, that's a good one. Leadership framework, nimbleness. There is, so I'll take a stab. I mean, I don't have a ready answer for that. But Molly, maybe you or Amanda. I would say, a framework should allow you flexibility to drive leadership learning in lots of different ways. And technology is only helping us deliver learning in higher fidelity, in more meaningful ways, allowing us to be nimble in our delivery of learning. So we've got to be nimble in our frameworks too, I imagine. And so if you have a broad framework that gives you some freedom within it, you're in a good position. So, but it's also a mindset, leadership frameworks, the good ones, are embedded in the talent life cycle and can be difficult to move, especially for awards and selection, and a number of other talent programs are connected to it. We totally appreciate that. But hopefully you develop a framework that does allow you some freedom in it, and technology enables you to more nimbly deliver different forms of learning against different leadership capabilities across levels and roles as you need to. I don't know, Mal, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I mean, to your point, I think that's just the tricky part, right? And I don't know if there is a silver bullet that addresses that, other than just continuing to look at it, to have that leadership framework that is going to enable you to make adjustments as needed and to accelerate the readiness that's going to be appropriate at that point in time for your organization, and looking at the strategic vision and direction of the organization and what those behaviors and underlying capabilities are that's going to necessitate what your leaders need to have to move the organization forward.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think very similarly, we're seeing a lot of companies that are just looking at it, just saying every quarter we're going to take a look, or every more frequently, just being aware that it needs to be updated more frequently. So I think that's it. Last question before we move on again. Is there an assessment tool that can assess these capabilities?
Yes, there is. Of course, and that's what we do, is we assess leaders against these more modern capabilities, primarily for leadership learning and development purposes. So we've got, EY has a tool that we use, that we developed and we use with our clients. This framework is like those of other organizations, so different organizations will have different tools. The way we approached developing this with our partners was to use the research, use the data, and blend it with what is the current practice happening out there around company transactions and transformations as companies merge, divest, any form of transaction. And as they drive transformation of any kind, certainly digital, what are the leadership capabilities that they really need? So that helped us form some of this framework, and we built our tool around doing that very quickly and nimbly, assessing leaders in a new way. So yes, there is an assessment platform for that.
All right, I think we can move on. Keep moving along.
Great. So we thought we'd continue the story, and I know there are more questions, Amanda, at the end. If we've got any more, we want to take a few minutes if we have time. We'd love to answer those. But we did want to continue the story and get back to some of the research that the Global Leadership Forecast has yielded. And listed on the left here, what you see are the leadership capabilities. What we took a look at was what matters most and what are we good at? And there are lots of different ways you can answer those two questions. But one way to answer what matters most is in the context of digital progress. So we were able to gauge how advanced in practice and in maturity companies that participated were in digital. Some are very early stages digital, maybe automating, maybe putting in chatbots in small corners of their organization, and some have fairly fully transformed the operations of their business, the customer experience, the employee experience with technology and digital tools. And so there's a whole continuum of digital transformation, and we mapped organizations against that maturity curve, if you will, and we said, let's look at these leadership capabilities, and for those who are really advanced in their digital practice, what leadership capabilities rise to the top as most prominent in their leaders. And so those are starred here. Leading with digitization. By the way, digital literacy, which is one of the capabilities we looked at, didn't come up as mattering that much because just being able to talk about it, turns out, doesn't yield much of a difference. You have to be willing, ready, and actively helping to drive technology change, digital change, and you have to be thinking commercially about digital. Those are different skill sets than just having a working acumen or a basic literacy. Having a basic literacy is good, but that's kind of level one. You got to get to level 2 and 3, which is what leading with digitization is really all about. In the previous slide, we called it digital fluency. It's really what that is. So that matters a lot. Being adaptable matters a whole lot. Driving execution, still being execution focused, really matters. Being hyper collaborative, we called that being a super connector when we wrapped it in the pretty wheel. But hyper collaboration, across the business, because this kind of transformation does not happen in silos. It's got to be interdisciplinary with finance, IT, HR, the business unit, whatever, across the enterprise, operations, technology. Building people around you that can help do it. So identifying, developing future talent, and then 360-degree thinking, which is that holistic, I can see the forest and I can see the individual trees. I'm into the details, but I'm into the big picture type of thinking. So those are some of the leadership capabilities. If your company is thinking about driving digital transformation, lots of leadership mindsets and capabilities will matter. In this research, these are 6 that rose to the top as mattering a whole lot. Now, the second question we had is, so what are we actually good at? At least self-reported. So the 25,000 plus leaders in the study told us what they think they're good at and what they don't. It'll be interesting to do this as a 360, and when you do that, you get different views from different leadership teams on what they are good at and what they're not so good at. But when you have a self-report study like this, turns out we're not so good at a couple of things. Basically, any of them that touch technology, for the most part, digital literacy, leading with digitization, leading virtual teams. Cultural curiosity is inclusion. So that's a really interesting one, that people don't feel like they're better at building and leading diverse teams for inclusion. We've got some work to do there. 360-degree thinking and intellectual curiosity. So you'll see some of these map to the digital progress capabilities. So if you're looking to drive digital transformation or technology evolution in your company, the 6 flagged in the middle column matter a lot, and you probably have a number of leaders that aren't so good at a few of those. And so that's where you might start without doing an assessment. That's where you might start thinking about doing some learning, driving some.
Joe, I think we have a good question that just came in. Talking about the digital transformation, Kelly says it's important to emphasize that it isn't owned by the IT function, that it's something that's owned by everyone. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Oh, yeah, we couldn't agree more, Kelly. Thank you for bringing that up. Digital technology transformation or digital transformation is defined in different ways. It's big and small. But when you think about it in aggregate at an enterprise level or business unit or functional level, and as a major transformation initiative, it is absolutely not IT. It is IT plus finance plus HR plus the business unit plus other functions, could be strategy. So it is the collaboration of people that will drive successful transformation of any kind, but certainly digital. And that's why we need leaders with the right mindset and skill set capabilities across those functions to be able to think and drive technology evolution and digital transformation specifically. So yes, Kelly, totally agree.
Yeah, and while we were on this subject, do you have any recommendations for how companies can build some of those tech fluency capabilities? Yeah,
there are many ways to drive learning around that. Again, some of them we can think of this as technical skills and adaptive skills, right? And so there are all kinds of ways in which you can drive learning, free and paid for, on technical skills. So you can take a course on Udemy on blockchain, or any number of other kind of learning platforms. We, EY, and our partners here, EDI and Conference Board, we all have learning assets and learning programs that are helping fast track leaders, get leaders caught up on some of the technical stuff. Again, not to turn them into analysts or coders, but to really bolster their level of comfort, their fluency, their understanding of some of the technical elements of digital era, skills and leadership capabilities. And then adaptive learning is really, pure leadership learning development. Got to build a program around it. Molly, in a couple of minutes, is going to take us through an example of where we're doing that. So, Amanda, maybe we'll move ahead so Mal has time to emphasize that study, or that work. So, I want to share just two quick things. Some of you, those of you who are highly analytic, we would call you our thinkers, are probably saying, where's the beef? Does this really matter to performance? And the Global Leadership Forecast helped us understand that it really does. So we put leaders into 4 buckets based on their digital era leadership capabilities. So we looked across all those competencies, if you will, and we stacked leaders, those who are digital pioneers, top quartile, performing really well against all of those, and then bottom quartile, those really uncomfortable or not leading in those ways. And then we looked at how their companies performed in the study. So we had company performance data in the Global Leadership Forecast, which was awesome data to have. And the results were pretty astounding. So the more digital era leaders you have, the stronger your performance as a business. And it didn't matter by geography or industry or sector at all. This was very consistent across any of all of those. So this wasn't just for the tech companies. This was for anybody. So 50% performance premium versus industry average on a collapsed financial metric. And so as our working world becomes more automated, more digital, we expect that this performance premium, this gap between those who are getting it today and those who are not getting it today, to only grow. We expect that gap to grow. Last thing I'll share is just a little more evidence, and then over to Molly to share our client example. We just talked about, companies with high concentrations of digital era leaders are performing financially better. But for those of you in HR and connected to talent and leadership programs, they're going to help you too. So when you have a lot of these kinds of leaders, leaders in this study perceived much higher leadership quality around them, 2 times higher, 3.2 times stronger bench strength, and they were much more able to fill critical positions from the inside. So as we're all in this war for talent, developing and filling from the inside becomes even more important. And we're able to do that when we're focused on these kinds of leadership capabilities. All right, Molly, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, absolutely. So just wanted to share a case study of an organization that we are currently working with who came to us with a challenge saying that they needed to accelerate the readiness of their future enterprise and executive leaders. And specifically, when we took a look at the leadership capability wheel with them, they identified that they needed to have leaders who were more resilient, who were better 360 thinkers, who were open to embracing disruption, and who were inspirational. And so we developed a 9-month program with them to strengthen their skills in these leadership capabilities, brought in lectures, town halls delivered by industry experts, executive level coaching, leadership assessment, and they have ample access to C-suite leaders, industry experts, and their peer group. And I'm thinking a lot of you are probably saying to yourself, well, that's par for the course. We do that now, or I've developed that program already for my leaders. So what's unique about this program, though, it is entirely virtual. We are delivering learning at a point in need entirely through a mobile app. So literally learning is in the hands of each of the participants. We have brought in some of the best faculty to deliver all of our town halls and all of our lectures virtually. And so this has really allowed us to blend the best of academic and the business world, and having that enabled through digital technology to a global pool of participants is something new and different for this organization, where in the past, not being able to embrace technology and bringing everybody together for these opportunities would have been cost prohibitive. Even our executive coaching is done entirely virtual. So every week, the individuals are seeing on their app new knowledge nuggets that are allowing them to get some of the latest thinking, some of the latest research, articles, webcasts, podcasts that are allowing them to think differently and target some of their priorities. So we are focused on the concept and the idea around being an inspirational leader. What is some of that best curated material out there that we are putting out there to participants and allowing them to iterate, hypothesize, interact with each other and with their leaders on what being an inspirational leader means to them as an individual, means to them as a cohesive future leadership team, and what they need to be doing differently in their everyday behaviors and capabilities to create that environment that is going to lead and propel their organization in a transformative age. And it's been a lot of fun to watch that interaction kind of evolve and develop as the participants have become more familiar with the tools and technology, and as we have matured the program along with them. We're able to measure changes in the targeted behaviors that they identified as priorities. And in addition, what was really unique about this program is we sat down with the C-suite and with the leaders in their development team and identified the KPIs with them. So how we want to take the individuals in this program from good to great and really get their readiness to a point where they are prepared to lead as a unit together with their teams. And so we're able to measure both qualitatively and quantitatively what some of these results are as they have been identified through their KPIs and through feedback that we're hearing in both the pre-assessment and then a post-assessment that we'll give at the end of the program. So having them kind of go on this journey of accelerated leadership in a new platform that is entirely virtual and driven by technology has given us such an opportunity to open the doors and bring in new content that just can't deliver in a traditional method, and really emphasize the fact that leadership is a journey and that we are all in this leadership journey and leadership learning together. And so that concept of embracing a growth mindset has really come through with some of the participants that we're seeing who are very active on these platforms and posing questions and responding to questions. And I see a lot of questions coming through our chat, which is great. And I apologize because we can't get to them all. And I'm sure Joe, Amanda, and I could stand for hours and hours and talk about the imperative of accelerating leadership and digital era leaders. And I'm not saying that we have a silver bullet. It's going to take a lot of work, and an organization, I'm going to use the word physically, needs to be ready for this transition. Leaders need to embrace what it means to move from just doing digital to being digital and take advantage of the leadership capabilities that are going to need to be considered to move an organization forward and new behaviors that are going to be practiced and enabled. I don't think it's going to be enough that leaders who have come up through rank and file necessarily have the capabilities that are going to be needed to move an organization forward, to sustain an organization status quo. Yes, maybe that would work, and that would work in the past. But in order to truly move an organization forward and to accelerate, you need to really drive some targeted, adaptive, and technical learning at the points that matter the most. And so identifying where your critical leadership roles are and the behaviors and the readiness to pioneer this digital transformation is really going to be imperative. So let me pause there. Amanda, final questions or maybe some thoughts from you. I know we only have a minute left, and like I said, we could talk about this for hours over a good lunch or so because there's so much good stuff going on.
I do think we're out of time. I know there are a few other questions that we didn't get to today, but we are continuing the series. So come back, join us next month, and we'll keep the conversation going. But I do want, so I'll end on that. Our next webcast is on the financial impact of leadership quality. We will have Evan Sinar and Rebecca Ray on that webcast, and you can see the link there if you would like to register and join us again. Also, use this code if you would like to join our upcoming annual Change and Transformation Conference. Please join us. And if you could please remain on the line for a minute after we finish out here, we do have a survey, and we ask that you just take a brief minute to fill out the survey and help us to continue to improve our webcasts for the future. So thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time.